And the funny thing about the word settle is, of course, it sounds bad. You know, the language matters, and that sounds bad. But of course, if you're starting from an unrealistic place, then settle isn't a bad word.
Real talk. Yo, I've never heard anybody say it like that, but that makes so much sense. If you're starting from an unrealistic place, then to settle isn't a bad word or term. Ooh!
In fact, you could just say, instead of having inflated expectations, just have realistic expectations, as opposed to high and low and settling. And
what's going on, you guys, and welcome back to A Different Perspective. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button for your boy. So for a few days now, I've been sitting on a video from Suzanne Vinker. If you don't know her, you should know her. I'm going to have her channel linked down in the description box below. This video right here in particular, she's going to be talking about the husband store. The husband store and the wife store. Basically, it's going to be describing how we as men are a lot simpler when it comes to our selection in a mate as far as a woman than women are. They're a bit more complicated. But I think this is a pretty cool story that's really going to depict a simple difference between men and women when it comes to the selection process. So with that being said, y'all ready? I'm ready. Let's go.
so there's this store in New York City called the husband store, where women can only go to choose a husband, And at the entrance to the store is this sign that you can only visit the store once. And there are 6 floors inside, and the men's value increases as women ascend each flight of stairs.
You hear that? I love this story. You can only enter the store once, and the men's value increases as the women ascend each floor. Remember that.
And they're permitted to choose any man they want from any floor, or they can go up another floor. But they cannot go back down except to exit the building.
Okay.
So a woman goes into the store to find a husband. On the first floor, the sign says, "These men have jobs." On the second floor, the sign says, "These men have jobs, love kids, and are extremely good looking."
I remember back in the day when just having a job was enough. Okay, the second floor sounds pretty awesome. Good looking man, loves kids, he has a job.
Wow, the woman thinks, this is great, but she keeps going up. She goes to the 4th floor, and the sign there says, "These men have jobs, love kids, and are drop dead good looking, and they help with the housework."
And they
Mercy me, the woman says, "I can't stand it." Yet she still goes up to the 5th floor. And there the sign reads, "These men have jobs, love kids, are drop dead gorgeous, help with the housework, and have a strong romantic streak."
Uh-oh.
The woman is tempted to stop there, but she doesn't.
Of course not. She's a woman.
Instead, she goes to the 6th floor, where the sign reads, "You are visitor 3,261,496,012 to visit this floor. There are no men on this floor. This floor exists solely as proof that women are impossible to please. Thank you for shopping at the husband store."
Woo! That floor exists solely to prove that women are impossible to please. Billions of women made it up to that floor, and there was nothing there for them. Welcome to the modern woman. That's crazy. Now, let's go over to the women's store, the wives store, I should say. Let's see what the guy's doing over there.
To avoid gender-biased charges, across the street. And on the 1st floor, there are wives who love sex. On the 2nd floor, there are wives who love sex and who are kind. On the 3rd floor are wives who love sex, who are kind, and who enjoy sports.
You heard that?
The 4th, 5th, and 6th floors have never been visited.
The 4th, 5th, and 6th floors have never been visited. Because the guys, they were perfectly fine with what they found on the first 2, 3 floors. The sex major seller. What was the second one? I would have stopped right there. On the 2nd floor. She loved sex and she was kind. I don't care nothing about no sports. I would have stopped on the 2nd floor. What? But a woman, she go, I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I deserve the best. There's more to this video. Let's hear a bit more. I ain't going to do the whole video, but we'll have it linked down below.
That's the end of the story.
I love that.
I love it too. I love it too.
So tell me why you posted it.
Okay, so look, it was just an obvious, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out the message there. Women are very difficult and hard to please, and men are not. Men are simple, their needs are simple, and the more women think they can have, the more they tend to go after. And then when they get to that point, they're never satisfied and want more. I mean, that's the general gist of the message. And of course, depending on whether you have a sense of humor, right?
Which is very rare these days.
Very rare. I mean, you would think that I said, because of course I made some comments about Anecdote, and that today we are having a problem with extremely unrealistic and high expectations, usually on the part of women.
Yes.
And that it's a problem for sustaining marriages and relationships. And you would think that I told women that they should just, I said something like lower your expectations, and I made it pretty simple, but then I explained it in the post. But if you just looked at the meme, it said, lower your expectations, ladies. And you would think that I had said,
lower your standards.
Just take any old man off the street. You shouldn't have any, even if he abuses you, that's okay. They just took it as far as they could take it.
There's nothing wrong with lowering your expectations, man. Everybody wants the best for themselves. Everybody on the planet does. But there's realistic and then there's not realistic. I would love Rihanna, but Rihanna's with A$AP Rocky and they got a kid on the way. So my expectations are a lot lower than Rihanna right now. Come on now.
I had five rather difficult years of my life as an online dating coach. I mean, it was very entertaining in lots of ways.
What was the takeaway?
All right, you heard this? She had 5 difficult years of her life as an online dating coach. Suzanne just asked her what was the takeaway. Listen to what her response is.
Dealing with women's expectations was the thing that did me in the end.
She said dealing with women and women's expectations was the thing that did her in the end. Now, that's something that I've heard very commonly lately when it comes to dating coaches, female dating coaches in particular, who deal with women and helping them in the dating market. A lot of them are saying what? They're saying that they're giving up on being a dating coach because it's so hard to please these women. For one, you're put in a position as a dating coach to where you have a plethora of people that you can match together. And a lot of times these women are feeling as though the options are endless. They're like, oh my God, it didn't work with this guy for whatever reason, so I'm going to go ahead and see what else she has to offer. You know what I'm saying? And they will pick and choose and find any little thing about these guys to where they'll be like, you know what? None of these guys work. None of them work. Nobody's perfect for you, lady. I mean, nobody's perfect, but you can find one that's perfect for you. Or at least suitable, right? Someone that you can get along with. But if you nitpicking on every little thing about an individual, then you're probably going to end up being single for the rest of your life if you don't lower those standards. And that's something I was telling a friend of mine when it was one lady, I can't remember her name, black lady, that first came out that, addressed the fact that it was so hard to please women, and she was a dating coach. I sent her to a friend of mine, and my friend, a female friend who's single that also struggles with dating, she was like, oh, I know what her problem is. She's just a horrible dating coach. It's not that these women couldn't find what they were looking for. She's just sucked at her job. Well, if that's the case, then how come so many of these women that are in this position to matchmake are quitting because of women? Because of women and their standards. Get it together.
And trying to get them to get real. I mean, they'd come in with these huge shopping lists of things that they had to have in their relationship and that they would lay out in their profiles. I need this, I want that, I must have this. And I would say, you're not in a buyer's market, lady. I was dealing mainly with women over 50. And, they're up against it.
She says she was dealing with women mainly over the age of 50, and they're up against it. I was having a conversation with a young lady literally last night and the night before, and it was so baffling to me that she is unaware of the truths that we all know today in regards to men and women when it comes to their prime. And I was trying to explain to her the guys' primes, our prime is 35 to 50 years old. That's when we're in our prime because that's when we're most established. And she was trying to bring it back to the sex. No, like guys' sexual prime. I'm like, no, not the sexual prime. I'm talking about our prime as far as what we have to offer the world. What we have to offer ourselves, our family, our community, a loved one, whatever that may be. Our prime typically starts at 35 when we may have some tenure in our career and we're established and we got our home, everything, our finances, everything is in order. That is a man's prime. And she's like, no, man's prime is in his early 20s when he's got that good sex. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're talking about the sexual prime. I'm talking about the market value prime. And I was telling her women's prime is 18 to 35. After the 35, they're viewed as somewhat less valuable to certain men, especially high valued men, right? Men that are looking to settle down with a woman that's not damaged, that hasn't put on excessive weight, and a woman that doesn't have kids by another man. Not to say that men won't still be with those women, but those women are just not considered to be in their prime. And she couldn't understand that. So for this woman here to say, hey, I mean, look, they pretty much hit the fan. They're 50 years old. Some of those women may think that they're in their prime when not. They have the world against them when it comes to what's available to them in the dating market. Because a guy that's 50 can date a female that's 30.
Online dating, the numbers are beginning to really dramatically shift against the particularly well-educated women.
You heard that? In particular with online dating, the numbers are beginning to shift drastically against educated women. And what do we know is going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years? The amount of women that's going to be in college is going to far trump the amount of men that is going to be in college, because men are realizing, wising up, hey, you know what? It may not be best to go ahead and jump into immediate 30-year, 40-year debt. But women, they still may be going to college to further their education. And obviously, they're going to be the ones looking like, oh, wait, where's these men that's on my level? Sorry, sweetheart, but they're not there.
And they had to sell themselves. They had to work out what they had to offer a man, not what they had to have. And boy, was that hard work. And, you know, this sense of entitlement, this sense of...
I suppose
I also, what I find really offensive is their willingness to denigrate men. I mean, they see so little, many of them see so little good in men.
Yes. Oh my, look, y'all don't understand how excited I am right now to be listening to these white women say this. I was like, okay, all right, good. Because this shows proof that this modern way of being really exists within every culture, every nationality of women, especially here on the West. And then to be hearing these white women that have wised up to it, realize that they're facing it themselves because they're having to deal with other women, and they understand it well enough to articulate it. I gotta send this to all the females, all the ones that I've had these discussions with and they couldn't get it through their head. I gotta send this to them. Man, this is golden.
And they're so on the lookout for men's faults rather than looking past their physical appearance, past how much money they had. I mean, they just cannot begin to settle. That term, to settle, is one of the keys here. Don't you think? I mean, they really bristle at the notion of settling.
And the funny thing about the word settle is, of course, it sounds bad. You know, the language matters, and that sounds bad. But of course, if you're starting from an unrealistic place, then settle isn't a bad word.
Real talk. Yo, I've never heard anybody say it like that, but that makes so much sense. If you're starting from an unrealistic place, then to settle isn't a bad word or term. Ooh.
In fact, you could just say, instead of having inflated expectations, just have realistic expectations, as opposed to high and low and settling and aiming high or whatever. You know, you can change the language. But yeah, there's just no. I think the best way to get a woman to understand it, I have found, at least in my coaching business, is if you reverse it. I find that's very quick. If you reverse the genders, let's say I'm talking to a wife who's really, really, upset because her husband is an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I reverse it and I say, well, what if he expected boom, 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 boom of you? And all of a sudden it's just crystal clear. Or whatever, it's not even of your qualities, but whatever it is they expect in the relationship that you should do or be like. It doesn't work that way in reverse because men don't have very many needs. They really, genuinely don't. Be nice, be available.
Yep.
Affection.
Yeah.
Appreciation,
Yeah.
and that's about it.
That's really it.
It just
maybe a bit of sex, but that's
The sex was the
sex. The sex was. I'm sorry. When I said be available, I meant sex.
Yeah. She said when she. Yes, of course. We know. I already knew.
Including sex. Be interested in sex. If you're interested in sports, that's helpful. If you're not, whatever. But yeah, sex, food, being nice, kind, generous, selfless, thoughtful.
See, the things that, and I've said this several times before, the things that men are interested in when it comes to women are so free. It literally just takes you being a decent person. If you're a decent person, all that stuff that she just named is going to already come with you. You're going to already have all that stuff in the bag. Fellas, if you're dealing with a woman that doesn't have those core qualities, watch out. She may not be a decent person. Because that stuff is too easy to have. Right?
I mean, really, these are human traits. It's just that for men, they're just, the list isn't long. That's the difference. That was the point of the husband store and the wife store, is that one's got a long list and one doesn't. And when you look at those side by side, if you're able to really look at men and women and their needs and your relationship in a more, detached or objective fashion and not take everything so personally, you can see that there's a real disconnect there. That it doesn't make sense to have a huge laundry list and then this list. I mean, obviously there's going to be a disconnect if you don't learn to work with what those respective needs are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for women, it ends up being just the focus is so much on them and just not at all on men.
Yeah. Yeah. And another interesting thing too. And if I talk to my young guys, my young fellas, right? Guys that are either in their teens or the early 20s, early to mid 20s, what they need in a woman is even less typically. Because if I'm going back to myself in my early 20s, all I wanted a woman to have is a cute face and a high sex drive. That was it. That was it. And then as I got a bit older, then there was other things that I was expecting from women. I'm like, hell, look, I need you to also have a good personality. And that was it. That was the only other thing I cared to add to it. That was the only other thing I cared to add. But then when I found out about women and what it is that they look for in men, I was, oh my God. They want gods.
Yeah. But isn't that also something to do with the shift in power that's occurred in relationships? And I always feel that comes back to giving women the power to walk. I mean, when women entered relationships and were dependent on their relationship, had nowhere to go because they couldn't support themselves and their children. I always feel, you might as well look for the good in that relationship because you've got no option. I mean, and I think when then the big dramatic shift occurred, when women gained independence, they gained the capacity to support themselves. In places like Australia, they got this huge support network, the government really competing very effectively with the capacity of men to support women, particularly at the low income levels. Women do much better with the government supporting them than they do with the low income men who might.
It's the same thing here in America.
Be competing with the government.
And I like.
Anyway,
go ahead.
Yeah, go on, Suzanne.
No, I was just gonna say, to me, it's so much about mindset, because the argument isn't about the law and whether or not people should be allowed to get divorced or whether or not women should work. It's really about your mindset going in. And I like to say that one of the most effective things for keeping a relationship or a marriage going is to take divorce off the table.
Mm.
And that's a mental thing that when you do it and you pretend that you lived back before women could support themselves or before divorce was so available, it just puts you in a completely different mindset.
Interesting. That was something I've never really thought of. And that makes a whole lot of sense, that if you take divorce off the table and put yourself in the mind frame of how things used to be, where women could not support themselves and a family, then it makes you work things out. Nowadays, obviously, I was literally just watching season 3 of was it Black Ink Crew, you know, New York or whatever. I think that's the name of the show. And one of the characters on there, he had recently gotten married to this woman in season 2, and now she's ready to divorce him in the very next season. This was only after like not even a year, I don't think it was. She's already ready to leave him just because she felt like she lost herself in a relationship, just because he's been going out and partying all the time and living his best life and coming back home when he wants to. And she feels like, oh, it's just her and their kid at home all the time. And I'm like, wait a minute, why aren't they working this thing out, working through this? He clearly is madly in love with this woman and he loves his child deeply. But instead of trying to work it out, she's like, oh, I'm ready to go ahead and just leave you. I'm like, what in the world is wrong with these modern women? You come across this one little bump in the road, and now you're ready to hightail it out of there. It's
And it forces you to have to deal with something that you would otherwise say, well, I don't have to, so I won't.
Yeah.
It's too hard. I'm out of here.
See, this is another reason why the likelihood of me getting married is slim to none. It's slim to none, because for one, I know there's things that I gotta work on about me, and then if I come across a woman who may be like what I just depict, then we're gonna have an issue there, right?
That's right. The door is open, and because that door is open, it's changed the whole nature.
Changes the whole thing. Yep.
And also with that, we also gave real incentives to women. I mean, okay, divorce obviously is a very destructive thing in all sorts of ways, but many women know they'll come out okay. Not all women, but lots of women will end up with a house, they end up with the children, they can deny contact, the father's contact with those children. I mean, they have enormous power in the divorce situation.
Ooh, you hear that? Women have enormous power in the divorce situation. Shit.
Not all women, as I say, but
no, not all.
Many women.
Yeah.
And so it's not such a dreadful option for them. And men know that divorce is likely to be devastating for most of them in terms of their relationships with their kids and in terms of their financial assets and so on.
You hear that? In terms of the relationship with the kids and in terms of the financial assets too that the man had acquired throughout the years. Y'all, I'm gonna stop it right there. We're not even halfway through this video. It's so good. I'm about to finish watching it on my own, but I don't want this video to be too long. I'm gonna have it linked, the original, both of their channels gonna be down in the description box below. But y'all know what time it is. You like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more. As always, you can follow your boy on the gram and Twitter at Artie Kicks, and I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. See ya.